Chapter 2, EricSkaggs.com. Well, here comes the fun part. I get to talk about myself. Well, I'm being sarcastic, but that doesn't work very well here. I guess it's hard to detect. So people have told me this is the best part because I tell it all just like it is, and my life is pretty screwed up. So here we go. I, Eric Skaggs, was born on September 13th, 1973 in Morgantown, West Virginia. So I'm already a bit disadvantaged, branded for life as a backwoods mountain redneck hillbilly. My father, Craig Skaggs, had just received a master's degree in public relations from WVU, and my mother, Rosemary Skaggs, had just received a bachelor's degree in nursing from WVU. The name on my birth certificate said Grayson Eric Skaggs, although I didn't really know that my first name was Grayson until I got my driver's license when I was 16. That created a real identity crisis, but since no one ever called me Grayson, I considered my name to be Eric Grayson Skaggs. So I know why my name is Grayson. That was my grandfather and my dad's side's name, and my dad told me it was some sick president's doctor's name, and he really ran the country for a while, and my great-grandparents thought very, very highly of Dr. Grayson. So when I was 10, I asked my mom why she and my dad named me Eric. And she told me it was because my dad had red pubic hair, and my mom's pet name for his penis was Eric the Red. So I was named after my dad's penis. I found that quite disturbing and hilarious. My mom always had a sibling rivalry with her only sibling, my Uncle Grant Myers. So when she found out Grant was marrying his wife Denise, my mom asked my dad to marry her, and he did. When my mom found out my Uncle Grant and Denise were having their first child, my cousin Susan, my mom asked my dad if they could have a child, and they did, me. So I was a result of a sibling rivalry, named after a penis, and was a redneck hillbilly. Not a good start to life. To make things worse, when Grant and Denise found out they were having another child, my cousin Grant Jr., my mom asked my dad if they could have another child, and my dad said all he ever wanted was a son, and he had that. So he was done having children. So my mom left my dad with the excuse that he drank and smoked too much to pursue a man that claimed to be a wealthy DuPont descendant named Ed Weisbrod. When I was about 2 years old, my mom packed me and some luggage up in the station wagon with the wood grain sides and moved to Wilmington, Delaware. She became a nurse for Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and they paid for her to get her master's degree in hospital administration at Temple University. My dad moved to Wilmington, Delaware soon after to be closer to me and to climb the corporate ladder at DuPont, where he became a very successful public relations executive. His claim to fame is he's the guy that saved the planet by helping to ban chlorofluorocarbons that were eating a hole in the ozone layer. He once showed me a golden statue of a guy holding up a globe in the lobby of the DuPont building that he earned for his efforts. My dad soon remarried a woman named Jackie, who had a son from a previous marriage named Jay. My dad says he was trying to fill that void that my mom and I left when my mom left him for Ed Weisbrod. So I remember a lot of horseback riding and balloon riding when I was younger from Ed Weisbrod's wealthy family. I even had a pony named Sonny, but Ed never wanted to marry my mother because she had a kid, me, and Ed wasn't as wealthy as he claimed to be. My dad actually ended up being wealthier than Ed. So eventually my mom got sick of kicking people out of the hospital that didn't have health insurance. That's kind of the primary job of a hospital administrator. And my Uncle Grant suggested she do like he did and start a State Farm insurance agency. So when I was 6, my mom quit her job and we moved to the Pittsburgh area, Scottsdale, Connellsville, and Mount Pleasant. So my mom could once again beat my uncle. She did do much better than Uncle Grant financially, but she struggles to this day with failed relationships, and Uncle Grant is still married to Denise, so who really won? So I went to a small Catholic school in Scottsdale, Pennsylvania called St. John's from the ages of 5 to 12, because even though I did well academically, and I got into first grade in the public school system, I was too young, and my mom wanted me to go to the first grade early so she could work on her business and to help me excel academically. So I was a nerd, a runt, but none of the 12 people in my class knew I was younger than them. They just picked on me for getting straight A's and being smaller than them. Since my mom was so busy building her successful State Farm insurance agency, I got to spend a lot of time with my grandparents that lived in the adjoining town of Connellsville. My grandfather, Grant Sr., ended up being more of a father to me than my grandfather. I rarely saw my father, who was now living in the Philadelphia area where he spent almost all of his working life working his way up the corporate ladder at DuPont and building what looked like a very nice new family with his new wife and son Jackie and Jay. So I went back and forth from the Pittsburgh area to the Philadelphia area when I was younger, but I consider myself a Pittsburgher. In 8th grade, my teacher, Mrs. Kowalczyk, gave me the first failing grade I ever got in my life, and I flipped out. It was about conjugating verbs. That's kind of ironic since I used my ability to conjugate verbs to come up with a YouTube.com domain name. I insisted on switching schools, and my mom let me. For most of the 8th grade, I got to go to the same school my mom went to, Connellsville East. We lived in the woods at the time, and I spent a lot of time drawing, painting, sculpting, riding my go-kart, three-wheeler, and quad dirt bikes. And until the age of 8, I did a lot of reading. When I was in 2nd grade, my teacher, I can't remember her name, I think it was Mrs. Maple or Plum, I think it sounded edible. She had a reading competition, so I read hundreds of books. I read books at lunch, between classes, during classes, after school, until I went to sleep, and from the time I woke up to the time in the morning to the time I got to school. I won the reading contest, and the teacher had me come to the front of the class to accept the secret award for all my hard work. She opened up her desk, rummaged around, and pulled something rubber off the end of a pencil. It was a pencil eraser protector. Everybody laughed at me, including the teacher, and the teacher told me the real reward was reading all of those books. But I vowed never to read a book I didn't have to read ever again. I was reading at a college level in 1st grade, and I probably read at a college level today. As a matter of fact, in 1st grade I got in trouble for reading The Yearling. My teacher thought I stole her book. How could a 6 or 7-year-old kid be reading The Yearling? It's like a 400-page, 500-page book. She stopped yelling at me for stealing her book when she found her copy in her desk drawer. Well, I want to extend upon this because I got a little bored writing about myself and I just kind of moved on. But I just want to say that I ended up going to 4 different schools in 3 years between 8th grade and 11th grade. And then I ended up graduating from Southmoreland High School after a brief stint my freshman year at Geibel High School in Connellsville. I was 16 my senior year of high school, so that was kind of unusual. And then between my senior year of high school and my freshman year of college, I ended up going to Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy in Bradenton, Florida. I thought I was going to be a professional tennis player. But then when I went to my first semester at IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, in 1991, I guess that was, I ended up realizing there was no guys' tennis team. They had eliminated a bunch of guys' tennis teams based on some sort of new act. I think it was called Act 9 or something like that. So I assistant coached the girls' tennis team at IUP for a while until they found out I didn't have work study. Then they went ahead and kicked me out of that position. Well, I didn't have a great time my first semester at IUP in 1991, but I did okay academically. I had to drop a few classes, but I ended up with a B average. And when I went home on Christmas break, my mom didn't really want me there because she thought I was interfering with her relationship with her new boyfriend, Jim, some sort of firefighter, and he was fairly abusive, kind of a tough, rough and tough guy. So when I went to go pick up my little BMW that I traded my Camaro for at the garage, I went to Star Lake Amphitheater to go see a Steve Miller concert. And I ran into some friends, we had fun and everything, but if you know anything about cars, I had just gotten all my calipers replaced, and so they have to bleed the air out of the brake lines. Well, it sat in the parking lot for hours, and when I left the concert at like midnight, the brakes failed. I went under a truck, stayed at a hotel room. My mom picked me up the next day. We looked at the car. It looked really bad. There were 2 girls in the car. They were okay, little bruised up, but everyone was fine. But my mom drove me straight to the recruiter's office and had me sign up for the military during the Gulf War. So I ended up in 1992, a series of unfortunate events placed me in the Gulf War. My mom said, I'm going to drive you to the recruiter's office, and if you don't sign up, I'm going to drop you off in the middle of the woods, and if you find your way home, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. It was a little bit that she thought I was interfering with her relationship with her abusive firefighter boyfriend, Jim. And a little bit, I don't really know. It was a good way to kind of get me out of the picture. So I ended up in the military, served in the Gulf War, got married very briefly, but when I went off to Iraq, my wife cheated on me, and when I came home, we got an easy peasy quick divorce, no joint property, just signed some papers, and it was totally free. The only reason we really got married is because it was the only way we could live together anyways. So then I got out of the military in I think about 1995, and the .com thing was a big deal. So I had my mom get me a computer from my uncle Vince that worked at IBM with an employee discount. But I spent most of my time working on my website, gogetitnow.com, over at the Eberly College of Business Computer Lab because they had high-speed internet. And I was too cheap to get internet, and it was dial-up. So in 1999, that fateful time at Eberly College of Business, I was over there working on gogetitnow.com, and I ran into Chad Hurley. Didn't even know his last name was Hurley till 2011, but I gave him this idea for this video sharing website called YouTube in exchange for a promise of 1% of the company, and now the company's worth something like $100 billion. And I've been able to dig up a little bit of evidence. So, and I've also put it out there. It used to be I was offering $1 million when I was going after the 16.5 million, but now that we're going after $100 billion, or the $100 billion YouTube company, 1% of that's $1 billion. I'm considering increasing the offering to $100 million if somebody can help me get the $1 billion. But in general, what it is anything anybody can help me out with. 10%. I'll give you 10% is the general idea. So that's a pretty good offer, I think. So now I'll move on to talking a little bit about Chad in Chapter 3. Thanks.